700 GMT, March 11, 2024. Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump talking tough against each other regarding the election 2024 in November. Mr. Biden regrets the Israeli decision regarding Rafah, Gaza. Photos of Kate Middleton. Heavy storm with strong winds in the United States eastern coast, especially New York. Car causing too much problem. Israel continue bombing Gaza despite of starting of Ramadan. Saddam Hussein saga. Frozen embryo are living thing. Heavy flooding in Indonesia. Chaos in Haiti. Evacuation of American personnel. I am thankful to all news resources. Now the news in detail.
Still stands with Israel.
He has a right to defend Israel, a right to continue to pursue Hamas, but he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken.
Well, on the campaign trail this weekend, Biden and Trump go on the attack in dueling rallies.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans are trying to take away our freedom.
Crooked Joe, you're fired. Get out of here.
Also tonight, chaos in Haiti. To begin embassy evacuations as armed gangs take over the capital. Controversial crackdown. Protests in Texas, with the state set to implement one of the toughest immigration laws in U.S. history. Plus, family photo. Princess Kate makes an appearance amid wild speculation about her whereabouts. And later, it's a deep clean with a catch.
I'm Carter Evans in Los Angeles, where you can get your pool cleaned for free, as long as you let the pool cleaners skate afterwards.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Jerika Duncan.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us on this Sunday. We begin tonight with a sharp escalation in the public rift between President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This weekend, the president took direct aim at Netanyahu's war strategy in Gaza, and today, Netanyahu pushed back. The war in Gaza grinding on, with 2 million Palestinians marking the start of the holy month of Ramadan, no ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, and a quarter of the population facing starvation. CBS's Skylar Henry is at the White House tonight and leads us off. Skylar, what exactly did Netanyahu have to say?
Yeah, Jerika, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the president was wrong on both counts as it relates to him not having the support of the Israeli people on the nation's interests and its policies, as Israel intends to move forward into southern Gaza, a refuge for millions, as the president warns of a red line that should not be crossed.
He's hurting Israel more than helping Israel. It's contrary to what Israel stands for, and I think it's a big mistake.
President Biden not mincing his words, criticizing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and calling for Israel's war with Hamas to come to a ceasefire. As humanitarian support by plane and by sea heads to the region, the World Food Program is warning that a quarter of the population in Gaza is one step away from famine.
This is a desperate situation. Food, medicine, everything needed, badly needed, and it's needed now.
The intensity of Israel's attacks haven't slowed. On Friday night, a blistering airstrike hit one of the tallest buildings in Gaza, home to nearly 300 families who were only given 30 minutes to evacuate.
The United States of America cannot be complicit in this mass slaughter of children.
Lawmakers are split, some critical of Israel's tactics, others of Biden's condemnation of Netanyahu.
When the President of the United States talks about Bibi and not Hamas, we're missing the boat here.
The crisis in the Middle East is also a main focus on the campaign trail. Both Biden and Donald Trump rallied in Georgia on Saturday, with the former president using his stump to sound off on his successor.
When you think of it, inflation wouldn't have happened. The attack on Israel wouldn't have happened. The attack on Ukraine with Russia-Ukraine would have never happened.
Now, President Biden says defense of Israel is still critical, but that the administration is also working on bringing ceasefire negotiators back to the table to try to resurrect a deal that would allow more aid in and more hostages out. Jerika.
Skylar Henry at the White House, thank you. Tonight, new alarm for Haiti. The U.S. military overnight airlifted non-essential embassy personnel out of the country. Now, this is the latest sign of trouble as the Caribbean nation descends into gang control. CBS's Christian Benavides has details. Good evening, Christian.
Good evening. A state of emergency that was supposed to last 3 days has been extended until at least the end of the month as powerful gangs try to overtake Haiti's government. A woman shot in the leg by a stray bullet, begging for help in Port-au-Prince. It's part of the ongoing chaos as government forces engage in street battles with gangs. They came with fake guns, this Haitian says. We can't defend ourselves. Last week, gangs orchestrated a mass prison break, with the new ranks coordinating takeovers of hospitals and seaports. International flights canceled after they tried to take the airport. The UN estimates they forced 15,000 people from their homes. Miami Herald reporter Jacqueline Charles broke the story of the U.S. evacuating non-essential embassy staff and fortifying its compound in Port-au-Prince with Marines.
The U.S. Embassy is actually located in a crossroads of about 3 powerful gangs. I mean, the country is near collapse.
Gangs have filled a power void left by the assassination of the president in 2021. Prime Minister Ariel Henry was appointed, not popular, and is facing calls to resign. He's in Puerto Rico, unable to return home after traveling to Kenya to push for a UN-backed police force. U.S. Representative Sheila Phyllis McCormick represents a community in South Florida with a large Haitian-American population.
It's terrifying every single day. So it's time that the international community steps in and actually helps Haiti.
The Haitian gang leader who organized the uprising has warned there will be a civil war that will, quote, end in genocide if Henri doesn't step down. Eureka Caribbean leaders have organized an emergency meeting on Monday in Jamaica, inviting officials from the U.S., France, and the United Nations.
Wow. Christian Benavides, thank you for that reporting. To Texas now, and a new battle over a controversial state law known as SB 4. Hundreds rallied outside the state capitol in Austin protesting the measure before it goes into effect this week. CBS's Camilo Montoya Galvez has details on exactly what this law would do.
This section of the U.S. border, fortified by layers of shipping containers, fences, and razor wire, is one of the areas where Texas troopers are arresting migrants instead of transferring them to federal agents. Texas troopers have arrested more than 10,000 migrants on criminal trespassing charges as part of Operation Lone Star, the state's multi-billion-dollar border security effort. But if the SB 4 law goes into effect, Texas law enforcement will be able to arrest, jail, and prosecute migrants suspected of crossing into the U.S. illegally. State judges could also instruct migrants to return to Mexico.
It's unprecedented.
Texas state lawmaker Victoria Neave Criado believes SB 4 could lead to racial profiling.
Local police shouldn't determine whether a person is here lawfully or not. That's something that falls within the purview of the federal government.
In an interview with 60 Minutes correspondent Cecilia Vega, Governor Greg Abbott rejected those concerns.
We have people from Russia, from China, from Iran, from, again, I can't even name all the different countries they're coming from. So there's no one race that gets profiled.
As the sheriff of Kinney County, a Texas border community with just over 3,000 residents, Brad Coe supports SB 4 and says he's ready to enforce it.
Like any law, it's supposed to be a deterrent against crime. And this law, if and when it goes into effect, will be one more tool in our toolbox to prevent the destruction of our country.
Still, Sheriff Coe acknowledges the operational challenges his rural county faces.
Right now I have 6 full-time deputies and 8 part-time deputies.
That doesn't sound like enough.
It's not.
SB 4 is set to take effect on Wednesday night unless the Supreme Court agrees to block the law while lower courts review its legality. It's one of at least a dozen legal battles on immigration between the Biden administration and Texas. For CBS News, Camilo Montoya Galvez, Dallas.
Congress is set for another showdown over a bill to ban TikTok. House lawmakers are pushing ahead with a vote this week despite a revolt by angry users. Some lawmakers say the Chinese-owned app poses a national security risk and could be used to spy on Americans. Well, tonight in China, the country's top leaders are gathered in Beijing, focused on how to protect the world's second largest economy. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer is there.
The National People's Congress brings communist delegates from across China to the Great Hall of the People in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. For those from remoter regions, it's a big deal. A chance to network and snap trophy pictures for social media before getting to work.
The National People's Congress, the actual delegates, are in session, 3,000 of them in the Great Hall, basically there to rubber stamp the Communist Party's policies and plans for the coming year. They'll go in, but we're not really supposed to talk, so... Right now you compare the applause that came at the end of a long speech on the need for harsher punishment from corruption.
Every seat in the hall is filled with the rank and file. Up front and center sits President Xi Jinping, listening as officials review the government's performance with regular shout-outs to him for his wisdom and guidance. But away from this grand political spectacle, there are troubling facts. The Chinese people may be over COVID, but their economy isn't. It grew by 5.2% last year, its weakest performance in decades. And young people who studied hard for top grades now face a tough search for good jobs. The Communist Party says it will create 12 million new urban jobs this year, which sounds impressive until you factor in the over 11 million students who are due to graduate from college. As things started to wrap up on Sunday, the delegates were well aware that China is facing strong headwinds, from poor consumer confidence to American curbs on technology. And that is a sober reality check to take back to the folks at home. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Beijing.
Today, Kensington Palace released the first official photograph of Princess Kate since she underwent abdominal surgery back in January. The photo, taken by Prince William, shows Kate and the couple's 3 children and includes a message thanking the public for their well wishes. Today, a strong return to World Cup skiing for American and 2-time Olympic champion Michaela Schifrin, 6 weeks after knee surgery. She won the women's slalom in Sweden. It was her 96th career victory. Well, we learned today of the death of an American trailblazer. David Harris became the first black pilot to fly a commercial plane when he was hired by American Airlines in 1964. Captain David Harris was 89 years old. As a pilot, he said it was the greatest job in the world. Well, straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, they're the men and women risking their lives to cover the deadliest conflict in decades. Their story next. The war in Gaza is the deadliest conflict for journalists in over 30 years. At least 95 have been killed, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. CBS's Holly Williams has details with a caution that some of the images in her report are graphic.
If you think this looks crazy, you're right. In the aftermath of airstrikes in the Gaza Strip, while others flee, journalists hurtle towards the danger. The Israel-Hamas war is now in its 5th month. We'd know much less about the destruction and death wreaked in Gaza if it weren't for these people. Palestinian journalists are risking their lives to get the news out. Many now living in tents. With their home under bombardment, some are not neutral observers, and they don't pretend to be.
The situation is undescribable. We saw...
Noor Harazin has been reporting without a single day off since the war began.
I love my work. I mean, I feel like I was born to do it.
She's had to evacuate 3 times during the conflict and now lives with her colleagues in this cramped space in Rafah.
I managed to somehow, control my emotions and control my fear.
Last month, she was able to get permission to send her 6-year-old twins, Sarah and Bassem, across the border to Egypt and made the difficult decision to stay on in Gaza and keep reporting.
They can find easily food and water. They can sleep tight at night.
Other journalists had no way of keeping their families safe. Like Al Jazeera bureau chief Wael Dakdou, who lost his wife and 3 children. And Mohammed Al-Alul, a cameraman for Turkish television, who buried 4 of his young children. This is the deadliest war for journalists in decades. Noor Harazin has been criticized for allegedly supporting militants with social media posts many years ago. Now she says she doesn't take sides. She told us sometimes she questions whether the world is really paying attention.
I feel like I've said enough.
My colleague, Marwan Al-Ghul, is one of the brave Palestinian journalists who stayed in Gaza to report the news. And Jarika, he filmed most of the report you just watched. We thank you both for your reporting, and we'll be right back. Tonight, fashion's hottest trend, sustainability. Each year, more than 11 million tons of textile waste ends up in landfills. Well, in tonight's Weekend Journal, CBS's Elizabeth Cook introduces us to a designer giving new life to old fabrics.
Tucked away in a San Jose storefront, clothing designer Jocelyn West is hard at work on her new collection.
These are linen dusters made from old hand-embroidered tablecloths.
Old vintage tablecloths, once destined for landfill, or practically given away at flea markets.
I would find things and just be amazed at what I was looking at and how undervalued they were.
In her hands, Jocelyn transforms unwanted linens.
This was a Pendleton blanket.
Virgin wool blankets and cashmere scraps into one-of-a-kind masterpieces.
I think this one's beautiful.
Amazing, special, really beautiful design.
Jocelyn is practicing the art of what's called upcycling.
Saving things that would otherwise be discarded or no longer needed or used and giving them new life and new purpose and finding the beauty in them. This is all handmade filet lace and linen.
Her unique handmade garments stand in stark contrast to the trend of fast fashion. That's the mass production of cheap, stylish clothes now flooding the market. Research shows consumers are likely to discard fast fashion only after a few wears. Most of it ends up in landfill. As the clothing decomposes, it releases methane, a greenhouse gas that's 28 times as potent as carbon dioxide.
Being able to use old tablecloths or jackets or blankets and then giving it a new life, and it just makes it feel so much more special.
1 in 5 Americans now upcycles. It's a fashion-forward solution that hopefully never goes out of style. Elizabeth Cook, CBS News, San Jose, California.
Just another way to go green. Well, next on the CBS Weekend News, they'll clean your pool, but only if they can have some fun too. Finally, tonight, there are more than 10 million residential pools in this country. And if you live in California, our Carter Evans knows some guys willing to jump right in and clean them for free.
An empty swimming pool in Southern California is about as close as it gets to a personal skate park. But before these guys grind, they clean the grind.
So you actually come in and do the work?
Yes.
At your age?
Yeah. And a lot of times we'll do it for free too.
Steve Alba is known as the godfather of pool skating. Now, 61 years old, he'll still clean your pool for free if you let him bring his board and his buddies. Fellow senior skater Ozzy Osbourne scans satellite images for squalid swimming pools, then does a door knock.
They oftentimes don't quite understand. You want to do what in the pool?
And to be honest with you, it started as kind of a joke. To be honest with you, to see what actually worked.
And it did.
And it did work.
Decades later, they've perfected their pitch, which includes signing a liability waiver.
Harley.
And many homeowners are thrilled to get rid of the eyesore. What was your pool like?
A third filled with a bunch of green slop because it was a duck pond.
But the skaters saw something different.
What makes a good pool? The shape of the pool is one criteria. The surface of the pool, the plaster. The best pools to skateboard in are the pools that were made from 1950 to say 1977.
Yeah.
That 27-year window is just prime for us.
What's up here?
This is the filter box.
We got filter box, which we call the death box, because if you actually go into it on the way down, you die. So you don't want to fall on it. So that's why I call it the death box.
The death box is daunting.
Try to stay low and keep your knees bent and keep on your toes.
But let's be real. I was never going to come close.
This is harder than it looks.
It's way harder. Every pool is different. Every wall is different. It's like this little puzzle that I have to figure out. It's like this Zen thing where I'm doing anything, I'm thinking about skateboarding, but when I'm skateboarding, I can't think of anything else. It's a very seductive place to be.
What we do here is one of the best things, in my opinion, you can do skateboarding. And if you got any more empty pools for skate, please send them my way.
For them, an empty pool is full of possibilities. Carter Evans, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Only in California. And Carter, I hope you're okay. That's the CBS Weekend News for this Sunday. I'm Jarika Duncan in New York. We thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.
Welcome back, America. Another very smart man, our buddy Newt Gingrich. We used to sit back there, speaker, and watch President speak. I'm sure this time it would have been very difficult. It was a grueling, exhausting speech, not for Biden, but for the rest of us. You know, Newt, it's been 3 days since he gave the speech. I think it'll go down in history, if it goes down at all, as the worst State of the Union speech in history. But I want to get a little beyond that. I watched this speech. It's very upsetting, very frustrating, the serial lies and the distractions and all the rest. But I started really taking a measure of this man, Joe Biden. You know, he's been around a long time. We've been around a long time. We think we know who he is. But the extent at his core and his soul of who he really is, I thought came out big time during the course of that speech. When you watch that speech, surely in your mind you were thinking similarly, what am I dealing with here? What are we as a nation dealing with? What were your thoughts?
To have somebody who is such a vicious, dishonest liar standing in front of you and know that you can't get up and jump him, you can't hit him in the back of the head. And I thought Johnson, he would not know, he would laugh at things that were absurd. So I want to give him some credit here. I wasn't surprised. I have for a long time concluded that Joe Biden is a dishonest, lying, corrupt person who has no regard for his own country, who is pathetic in his inability to protect America anywhere in the world, and who, frankly, I think is rapidly going to become maybe the second worst president in American history. And I think that it's just astonishing to watch him. But I thought the speech the other night was beyond the pale. I went back and read Harry Truman's 1948 State of the Union. It is patriotic, unifying, visionary. The comparison, because Truman's clearly their model, and Truman in September and October was very partisan. But in January and February, he was the president of the whole country. What we saw, I think, the other night was we don't have a commander-in-chief. We have a Democrat-in-chief. We don't have a president. We have a chairman of the Democratic National Committee. And I think it is a disgraceful performance.
And of course, he's celebrated in the Democrat Party media, but not by very many other people. Do you think this is a consequence of him and half a century of him? Or do you think, because he's so chameleon-like, that it's really the Democrat Party and the radical elements of the Democrat Party that are leading this direction, or is it him that's leading the party?
No, I mean, I think he's sort of evolved this way, but it's also that he's surrounded now. Think of this as the third Barack Obama term. He's surrounded by left-wingers. They have a worldview that is radically different than us. You know, you really have in this country today two alternative realities. You have a group of people who believe that if you bribe the Iranians and you abandon Israel and you accept, the people can have 297 different sexual identities, etc., then you're a good person. They believe that. I mean, you have to at least give them credit that they are genuinely weird and that they are sincerely weird. Biden has decided that he's part of the weirdness and that therefore it has to be good because he's for it. But this is, in fact, probably the most corrupt man ever to be president. He's a man who is a serial liar. He's closer to the Sopranos than he is to a normal American president. They accomplished two things, I have to be in all honesty. They proved he could, in fact, speak energetically for over an hour and I thought pretty intelligently, drift out of the House chamber slowly, proving he had enough extra energy, enough ability to engage. So they got that out of the way. Second, they destroyed any effort to get him off the ticket. If you watch the number of Democrats jumping up yelling 4 more years, there's not going to be any effort to dump Joe Biden. So at one level, if I were Donald Trump, I'd feel this was a pretty good speech because he just locked down that he is going to be the Democratic nominee. And as the New York Times reported last Sunday, and what I thought was an amazing article, their chief analyst, Nate Cohen, said, people just don't like Biden. That's his biggest problem.
Well, what's the like? I mean, his personality is horrendous. What's the like? The way he speaks and the way he attacks people? Let me ask you this. You said he's the second worst president ever. Who's the first? I can think of Buchanan. I can think of Woodrow Wilson. Who would you say is the worst?
I think you have to say Buchanan because he allowed the South to seize all the federal arsenals and he allowed the concept of secession to grow under his presidency. An aggressive, go back and look at how Andrew Jackson, a generation earlier, handled the idea of secession, and he was going to mobilize the army and South Carolina back down. Had we had an Andrew Jackson in the 1850s, we probably wouldn't have had a civil war.
Of course, the Democrats hate Andrew Jackson, too, even though he was a Democrat. Let me ask you this about Joe Biden. Joe Biden threw in with the worst racist segregationist senators imaginable. Eastland, Stennis, Talmadge, Byrd, when he came into the Senate. He was not just the young, sophomore coming into the Senate or junior coming into the freshman. He was a leader. He wrote legislation, and he got Eastland to back it to oppose integration and so forth and so on. Now he walks around like he's the great hope. He's the savior of democracy. How dare you challenge him and challenge his viewpoints and so forth. How does he get away with this transition from one of the big-time segregationist racists 50 years ago to really pretending to be the great hope?
Well, first of all, remember that Delaware 50 years ago was a dramatically more conservative and more southern state. It was actually more sympathetic to Jesse Helms than it was to John Lewis. Second, you cannot overstate the importance of the elite news media. They're going to cover Biden, they're going to protect Biden, they're going to defend Biden. They hate Trump so deeply that no matter what Biden does, they're going to prop him up because he's the only hope they have of stopping Trump from getting to be president again. And the prospect of a Trump presidency is so terrifying if you are in the news media that anything you can do, no matter how big the lie, anything you can do counts. You may remember that in the 1930s, the New York Times won a Pulitzer Prize for a correspondent in Moscow who explicitly, deliberately lied about Stalin, refused to report on the famine that killed 10 million people in Ukraine, and was generally a despicable person. Got a Pulitzer Prize. Well, the same thing's going on here. This is comparable to the degree to which they lied about Castro and the degree to which they lied about Stalin. And all of the elite media has joined the New York Times in a conspiracy of dishonesty, trying to prop up Biden and, more importantly, trying to stop Donald Trump.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling.
Tonight, the devastating impacts from severe weather on the East Coast now blamed for at least one death. A pair of tornadoes just confirmed in the Southeast. Nationwide, thousands without power, trees toppled, and flash floods.
Coming down. Pretty heavy. Winds are gusting.
Even an avalanche warning, the region still under threat, and the good news for the week ahead. Americans evacuated from Haiti, the country spiraling out of control from gang violence as Haiti's prime minister struggles to hold on to power, the unrest on the ground as the race to get those Americans to safety. President Biden's all-out push for the general election, what his top allies are doing now, plus how soon former President Trump could clinch the Republican nomination. The president's harshest words yet for Israel's prime minister.
He's hurting Israel more than helping Israel.
The latest U.S. steps to get critical humanitarian aid to Gaza. NBC News exclusive, the U.S. military's new battlefront with Russia.
Anywhere we go, I know we fight.
Our team is in the Arctic as Marines train on the frozen tundra. New questions late tonight about Princess Kate after news agencies pulled a newly released photo of her over concerns that may have been manipulated. What we know so far. Good evening, I'm Peter Alexander. It's a little more than a week until spring, but tonight you wouldn't know it across much of the country. Parts of 8 states face winter storm alerts tonight as a punishing system is set to unload more snow and strong winds across New England and into the Great Lakes. Already tonight, we're learning about one death in New Hampshire. And across the southeast, the cleanup is now underway. Late tonight, meteorologists there confirmed a pair of tornadoes slammed into communities in Alabama and Georgia this weekend. Elsewhere, heavy downpours are to blame for extreme flooding, with Charleston seeing more than double its record of rain in a single day. We begin tonight with NBC's George Solis on the dangerous conditions.
Tonight, extreme weather turning deadly as millions clean up from a severe storm that slammed the East Coast. A 20-year-old skier died in icy conditions on New Hampshire's Mount Washington. 2 others were injured, authorities said late today, according to the Associated Press. Meanwhile, 2 hours away, homes were submerged on New Hampshire's coast. These images recorded by Henry Swenson.
If you could describe in one word some of the images that we're seeing, what would that be?
Heartbreaking.
Down south, Charleston, South Carolina, also hit particularly hard by the deluge.
It's locked up. Is it in neutral?
Some drivers were left stranded and relied on help from others to move waterlogged cars.
You need a hand, man?
The flooding so bad in some spots, firefighters were called out to escort people out of homes and businesses. Up the 95 corridor in Toms River, New Jersey, with downpours just as dramatic.
Pretty heavy. Winds are gusting. Wow. What a night.
In Queens, New York, this backseat passenger at times looking like he was braving rough seas instead of city streets. Severe weather didn't just stop there. In Echo, Alabama, and southeast Georgia, the National Weather Service saying tonight tornadoes were responsible for sections of homes being ripped to shreds and trees toppling. The storm system responsible for the damage is not done yet. Tonight, more than 60 million from Georgia to Maine are under wind alerts. The gusts could reach up to 60 miles per hour, leaving many bracing for potential power outages and difficult travel before the extreme weather clears out.
And George joins us now. George, everybody's looking forward to spring, so how soon before things are expected to warm up?
Yeah, that's right, Peter. A lot of us expecting that warm-up, and the good news is that the East Coast is expecting to see a significant warm-up into next week. The region, some areas here, could see above-average temperatures by as much as 20 degrees by Wednesday. Peter?
George Solis in Lower Manhattan tonight. George, thank you. To Haiti now, where an urgent evacuation effort is underway. The U.S. military is racing to rescue non-essential personnel from the U.S. embassy there. The mission comes as that country is spiraling out of control amid a renewed surge of gang violence, and its prime minister faces growing pressure to resign. Marissa Parra has the very latest.
Tonight, an evacuation amid a country in chaos. A U.S. military operation airlifting non-essential embassy employees out of Haiti. A move approved by President Biden, who a U.S. official says remains deeply concerned. The administration also boosting embassy security. U.S. Southern Command saying no Haitians were on board that flight. Last week, the White House emphasizing the urgency of the crisis.
We think about food, healthcare, clean water, and other forms of critical assistance through UN and NGO partners to help people in need.
A state of emergency in Haiti, now extended to next month. The UN reporting 5.5 million people, almost half the entire country's population, are in need of humanitarian aid. Years of political violence came to a boiling point last weekend when gangs attacked the capital, Port-au-Prince, and set free thousands of violent criminals from the prisons. Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry still in Puerto Rico, forced to land there. As calls for his resignation now growing louder. Haiti's main airports shut down, leaving Haitians stranded.
It's been bad before. This is probably the worst. I think we are reaching peak crisis.
Mercy Corps has been working to reduce violence in Haiti since 2019.
The situation in Haiti is delicate, and it is important to make the right decisions moving forward. And I'm sure the U.S. government, just like other governments, do not want to make the situation worse.
And Marissa, we've learned that leaders of Caribbean nations are calling an emergency meeting on this issue tomorrow.
Correct. Peter, they're meeting tomorrow morning to discuss what they call a dire situation, hoping to decide on a resolution to bring stability and relief to Haiti, but stressing time isn't on their side. Peter?
Marissa Parra with the very latest for us. Marissa, thank you. We're learning more about that helicopter crash that killed 3 people near the southern border. The National Guard identified 2 Army National Guard soldiers who were killed as 28-year-old Casey Frankowski and 30-year-old John Gracia, both from New York. The Department of Homeland Security also identified the Border Patrol agent who was killed as Chris Luna. A 4th person survived, but was badly injured and has been identified as a New York Army National Guard soldier. That crash is still under investigation. Now back here in the U.S., where President Biden is set to accelerate his campaign push this week after his State of the Union address. And in the next couple of days, his likely Republican opponent, former President Trump, could take a big step toward clinching the Republican nomination. Ali Rafa has more.
President Joe Biden's campaign for re-election now in full swing.
I like campaigning because it's the only time I get out of the cloister of the White House where I get to look people in the eye.
The president set to travel this week to New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
where more than 100,000 people voted uncommitted in the state's primary last month, much of them in protest to his handling of the Israel-Hamas war.
It's understandable I feel that way, and that's why I'm doing everything I can to try to stop it.
Biden hoping his growing ground game can chip away at former President Trump's favorability. The pair holding dueling rallies in battleground Georgia this weekend.
The road to the White House leads straight through Georgia.
Setting the stage for one of several primaries on Tuesday that could deliver both candidates their party's nominations. Mr. Trump, who lost the peach state to his 2020 rival by less than 12,000 votes.
There's never been the spirit that I've seen this time.
Vowing history won't repeat itself.
The curtain closes on Crooked Joe's corrupt reign, and the sun rises on a brand new day for Georgia and for America.
With Trump's last GOP rival, Nikki Haley, now out of the race, Republicans now rallying around the former president to help him secure a second term.
I'm not worried about Trump destroying democracy. I'm worried about Joe Biden destroying the world.
And Allie, there's renewed focus on Georgia after police say Laken Riley, a nursing student there, was murdered by a migrant who crossed into the U.S. illegally last month.
That's right. Trump met with Riley's family last night and once again blamed her death on President Biden's border policies. Senator Warnock today accusing Republicans of trying to score cheap political points. Peter?
Allie Raffer with the very latest. Allie, thank you. To the Middle East now, where a U.S. Army ship is en route to Gaza from Virginia. Its crew's mission to build a floating pier to provide humanitarian aid to desperate Palestinians. Another aid ship, this one Spanish, is also heading there from Cyprus. On the crisis itself, President Biden just delivered his strongest criticism yet of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, telling MSNBC he is hurting Israel more than he's helping it. The president had hoped to secure a ceasefire before Ramadan, which begins tonight for many Muslims in the region and around the world. Still ahead tonight, an NBC News exclusive, a rare look at the West's new battlefront with Russia in the Arctic. Plus new questions late tonight about a photo release of Princess Kate that some big news organizations say may have been manipulated. We are back with new questions about Princess Kate after major news agencies, specifically the Associated Press and Reuters, pulled a photo released today by Kensington Palace over concerns that it may have been manipulated. The photo, which we are not showing here, claimed to show Kate with her children, but the AP says there is an inconsistency in the alignment of Princess Charlotte's left hand. It was said to be the first official photo of Princess Kate since the palace says she had abdominal surgery. The palace said the shot had been taken earlier this week by her husband, Prince William. Now to an NBC News exclusive and a rare look at U.S. Marines training in the Arctic. It is a major test of NATO's military capabilities in the region as tensions grow between Russia and the West. Josh Letterman reports tonight near Russia's Arctic border.
Tonight, the frosty Arctic is the new battleground in a growing military competition between Russia and the West. The U.S. Marines and a dozen allies joining forces for war games in northern Norway as part of the largest NATO exercises since the Cold War.
U.S. and NATO troops are practicing storming a beach from the sea and the air as they work to defend NATO territory from any threat.
I'll go ahead and continue maintaining airway, and I'll grab a leg.
In this mass casualty drill, languages blend together as American and Norwegian troops work shoulder to shoulder. These war games taking place not far from Russia's border, on NATO's northern front line. As global warming melts sea ice, the U.S., Russia, and China are all seeking to expand their Arctic foothold. For the Marines, it's a sharp shift after decades fighting in the hot, dry climates of the Middle East. After a rocky journey through the mountains, we reach Marines dug in on the mountainside. At night, the temperatures can drop below zero.
We had Marines who had never been in the snow before coming to Norway.
The scenario, repelling an invasion by a major hostile power from the east.
You see in multiple vehicles.
And Moscow is watching. Norwegian officials tell NBC News they've detected Russian vessels nearby spying on the exercises.
Is it easier for an adversary to hide in snowy forest than it is, for example, in a desert?
I'd say it depends on the conditions. Here on a day like this, their snow tracks would be left. But if it was a snowstorm, those snow tracks would rapidly be closed.
These Marines have spent nearly 2 weeks here, sleeping up to 6 to a tent, boiling snow for water, even praying in the snow.
Amen. Go in peace, serve the Lord.
Lance Corporal Cooper Corey from Massachusetts joined the Marines a year ago.
My first time touching a ski pole was here. I fell in love skiing. How'd it go? Oh, I fell a lot. But, I had fun. Biggest smile on my face.
Tonight, a forceful message from the U.S. and its allies.
Anywhere we go, I know we can fight. I know we can thrive.
Josh Letterman, NBC News, Finnmark, Norway.
We are back in a moment with a closer look at why car costs are skyrocketing nationwide. We are back now with a consumer alert about the cost of owning a car. It is the second biggest expense for most people after your mortgage or your rent, and now the cost of everything about owning a car is driving in the wrong direction. Christine Romans explains why.
At S&S Automotive in Secaucus, New Jersey, owner Keith Scaglione is working hard to keep prices low for his loyal customers. And it hasn't been easy.
To do something like this, a few years ago, would it have cost the same or cost less?
No, it's definitely costing more.
Right.
That's a sensor like that now is probably at least 10% more than it was 2 years ago.
Keith used to adjust his prices once a year. Now it's every 3 to 6 months. That's because the total annual cost of simply owning and maintaining a new car climbed to more than $12,000 last year, up from about $11,000 the year before. And that doesn't even include monthly car payments, which spiked along with rising interest rates. Heather Trumke is a mother of 6 in Atlanta who sold her SUV.
You loved your SUV. Why did you sell it? The cost just got out of control. The maintenance, the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month. And it was heartbreaking.
Her insurance alone rose more than $100 a month. Car insurance up more than 20% nationwide last year as insurers pay out for pricier claims.
You have a high number of claims for all kinds of reasons, including that people aren't driving very well broadly. The data bears that out. And you have climate events that are essentially totaling cars.
Back in Keith's repair shop, this business is more than just a job. Keith's uncle started it back in 1969, and it has been serving this community ever since. But a lot has changed.
These are not your grandparents' cars. Now they're full of pricey sensors and cameras.
This truck probably has at least 60 computers in it.
60 computers in one piece of machinery.
Yes.
And those parts, more expensive to repair. But longtime customers like Alan Bonin say they'll keep coming back.
Oil price goes up, labor costs have gone up.
Yeah.
And you pay the price.
Christine Romans, NBC News, Secaucus, New Jersey.
And when we come back tonight, there is good news about the unlikely bond between these hockey players and their love of the ice. Finally, there is good news tonight about the power of teamwork to bring generations together. And as Boyd Hooper from our Minneapolis affiliate, Care TV, shows us, sports can also help break the ice.
All right, ready? There you go. Alone is not the best way to play hockey. That's a hit. But when Dad's not around, it is Matt Jenkins. I got him. Default.
Nonstop.
Denise and Morgan.
That's daily.
Say hockey is everything to their son.
How much do I like hockey? 100%, dude.
Matt is unique.
When he was born, there was some hintings there.
There was a genetic marker that was missing in his chromosomes. Developmentally delayed.
That's all they can tell us.
Delayed and delightful.
Don't do this at home.
Matt liked his high school years. And 3 more spent after graduation in his school district's transition program.
After that, here you go.
Missing his friends and structure, Matt found solace alone at the ice arena, where he also found them.
The Mud Ducks.
A group of men in their 60s and 70s.
It's our coffee clutch.
They said, you know, if you want to come at 9 o'clock when we start, you can skate with us.
Which is how 74-year-old Don Bremen and 74-year-old Tom Watt ended up skating daily with 21-year-old Matt.
Nice shot. Dog's a good teammate. Huh? You're a good teammate. Oh, thank you, sir.
They're his team.
Yeah, where it all begins.
The team that thought Matt needed better gear, then bought it for him. Including a jersey like theirs.
He sets his alarm every day.
Sitting at the front door waiting. That looks good.
Just when Matt needed new friends.
You look like one of us. He is.
He found them. 3 times his age.
They are everything to him. He comes home and he talks about them. So-and-so wasn't here today, but they think he's sick. I hope he's okay.
The Mud Ducks don't play games. They just play. Enjoying hockey and each other.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a blessing for everybody. When Steve Burnham saw how Matt was thriving, he started bringing his own son, Will, who has autism.
Hey, look at that Will going.
Now learning to skate and getting encouragement from Matt.
We're doing good, Will.
What do you say? They let him be who he is, and they are inclusive.
Hi, Polly.
When we leave, he gives us a hug.
There you go.
Means a lot.
Wisdom born of age.
This is a life, isn't it?
And friends
2, 3.
born of a flock.
Yeah, he's a mud duck.
Boyd Hooper, NBC News, Cottage Grove, Minnesota.
How much do you love Matt and the Mud Ducks? That's NBC Nightly News for this Sunday. I'm Peter Alexander. For all of us here at NBC News, we hope you have a great night.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Tonight, we're following several developing stories. Extreme weather turning deadly as millions face near tropical storm-strength winds. The U.S. military's life-saving mission to Gaza and Americans evacuated from Haiti. First tonight, the extreme weather. A nor'easter hitting the Atlantic coast. First responders sent to rescue skiers stranded in the snow. And the south, a tornado damaging homes, cars stranded in floodwaters. More than 55 million Americans now under wind alerts in the Northeast tomorrow. Our weather team is following it all. The U.S. military sending materials to build a floating pier to Gaza to help ease a humanitarian catastrophe. The death toll rising as the Muslim holy month of Ramadan begins. President Biden saying Israel's prime minister is only making things worse. American troops evacuating embassy personnel from Haiti. Non-essential workers being airlifted out amid the growing violence. Armed gangs threatening civil war. President Biden and Donald Trump trading attacks on the campaign trail. Our new ABC News poll asks which candidate is more trusted to lead the country, what the numbers could mean for the election. The Justice Department reportedly launching a criminal investigation into Boeing after a panel blew out from an Alaska Airlines jet in mid-air. The NTSB wants to know who removed the bolts from the panel and claims Boeing has not provided maintenance documents. Kate Middleton speaking out, the Princess of Wales, with a new message for those who wished her well and posting the first family picture since she underwent abdominal surgery in January. A dramatic rescue, police breaking into a burning car to rescue teenagers after a high-speed crash. And the road to the Oscars. Is it Oppenheimer's night, or will there be a spoiler? Ryan Gosling getting ready for his live performance, and why all eyes will be on Lily Gladstone. Will she make history? With Johnson and Lindsay Davis report from the red carpet.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us on this Oscar Sunday. I'm Rachel Scott, in tonight for Lindsay Davis. As we come on the air, more than 55 million people in the Northeast are bracing for powerful winds. They could reach up to 60 miles per hour by tomorrow. That's nearly the strength of a tropical storm. It all comes on the heels of that drenching nor'easter. In coastal areas, unusually warm temperatures, melting ice in northern Maine, increasing the risk of flooding, and a possible tornado tearing down trees and destroying homes across Georgia and the Carolinas. ABC's meteorologist Samar Theodore leads us off.
Tonight, a major storm bringing torrential rains and severe weather across the East Coast. In Mount Washington, New Hampshire, over a foot of snow and wind speeds of up to 70 miles per hour. Icy snow surfaces stemming from the state's warmest winter on record, causing dangerous mountain conditions. First responders rescuing 2 injured skiers Saturday at the Tuckerman Ravine ski area. A third skier, 20-year-old Madison Salzberg, suffered fatal injuries after falling 600 feet. In the south, a tornado tearing through Brantley County, Georgia, damaging homes, ripping off roofs, and bringing down trees.
You hear stuff flying and hitting the house, and it's just one of those things that you just don't expect to happen.
High winds and heavy rain combined with high tide, causing severe flooding in parts of South Carolina. Cars stranded in flooded out streets. Drivers forced to push their vehicles through knee-deep waters. In Tampa, more than 300 flights delayed and 90 canceled due to the nasty weather. Freezing temperatures in northern Maine. This drone video showing chunks of ice floating down the Aroostook River near Washburn.
Samar Theater joins us now with the forecast. Samar, the rain is over in the Northeast, but millions on alert for those powerful winds.
That's right, Rachel. So the rain has moved out. Now we're gearing up for strong winds just in time for the start of the work week. Take a look at where the wind advisories are situated from Washington, D.C. and Baltimore all the way up to Boston and Portland, Maine. We even have some winter storm warnings remaining further inland. Now, tomorrow morning, we could see wind gusts as high as 40 miles per hour. By the afternoon, 60 miles per hour. That could lead to power outages and downed trees. Meanwhile, out west, a series of storms battering the west coast. Storm 2 arriving tomorrow night into Tuesday morning. We could see under a foot of snow throughout the California Sierra and maybe even 30 inches of snow throughout the Cascades. Rachel?
Samara tracking those back-to-back storms in the Northwest. Samara, thank you. Overseas now, the U.S. is ramping up efforts to get aid to the starving people of Gaza. A logistics vessel now heading to the eastern Mediterranean. President Biden has ordered the U.S. military to build a floating pier off the Gaza Strip that will allow relief and supplies to be delivered by sea. Here's ABC's Tom Burge.
Tonight, no ceasefire on the eve of Ramadan. Israeli forces pressing on, with the death toll in Gaza now passing 31,000, and more than 70,000 injured, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. President Biden defending Israel's right to pursue Hamas, but warning Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu the scale of civilian suffering in Gaza is damaging Israel's international reputation.
He must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel.
The president's plan to build a temporary pier off Gaza for aid shipments now in motion. The US military saying this logistics vessel left Virginia this weekend, carrying construction equipment to the eastern Mediterranean off Gaza's coast. Meanwhile, in nearby Cyprus, this Spanish boat packed with 200 tons of food from US-based World Central Kitchen, set to depart as soon as possible, as the UN warns of a potential famine. At this Gaza hospital, little Mahmoud's mother, Intisar, telling ABC News her son is sick and dehydrated because of a lack of food. With Ramadan set to begin, heightened Israeli security around Jerusalem, including the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
This is the third holiest site for Muslims anywhere in the world, and keeping the peace here at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem during Ramadan without a ceasefire in place in Gaza will be critical for dialing down tensions in this entire region.
Tonight we saw Israeli police stopping some young men from entering the mosque. The sheikh directing part of that holy site telling me, "Are you Muslim? All Muslims should be allowed inside the mosque to pray."
And Tom Burge joins us now. Right, Tom, you mentioned that aid getting into Gaza. When will it arrive?
Well, Rachel, officials say that World Central Kitchen aid in Cyprus will take 2 to 3 days to arrive at an undisclosed location in Gaza after it departs. In terms of that US-made pier off the coast, well, Pentagon officials estimate that could be completed in about 2 months. Rachel?
Tom, thank you. Staying overseas and to Haiti. Today, U.S. Marines flying in forces to beef up security around the embassy and to help evacuate non-essential staff. The situation on the ground is becoming increasingly violent as armed gangs attempt to topple the government, leaving innocent people, including some Americans, in the crossfire. Here's ABC's Matt Rivers.
Tonight, with Haiti on the verge of collapse, the U.S. military evacuated non-essential embassy personnel overnight, choppering in Marines to reinforce the embassy. The State Department urging Americans to leave as gangs launch coordinated attacks across the country against the presidential palace and the Interior Ministry, multiple police stations set on fire, gang soldiers showing off stolen flak jackets. The government now extending a state of emergency, and Caribbean leaders calling an emergency meeting Monday for what they call a, quote, dire situation. And tonight, ABC News speaking to the man behind it all, gang leader Jimmy Cherissier, known as Barbecue. He says the first step in the fight is to overthrow Ariel Henry, and then we start the real fight against the corrupt oligarchs and politicians. The unelected, US-backed Henry took charge when President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated 2.5 years ago. Poverty, violence, and hunger soaring on his watch, now even the US pressuring him to step aside. Barbecue is Haiti's most notorious gang leader, a former police officer responsible for an explosion of violence. Even if Henry steps down, it's not clear who takes over or when new elections would take place. In the meantime, hospitals closed. Thousands of criminals have been freed, access to food or clean water increasingly scarce. Ordinary Haitians, innocent people, suffering. And Rachel, Barbecue explicitly told me that if Ariel Henry resigns, he will call for an immediate ceasefire and halt his attacks on police. Though given the destruction that Barbecue and his gangs have caused over the last several years, many will be skeptical of that statement. Rachel?
Matt Rivers on this developing story. Matt, thank you. Back here at home in the race for the White House, it is heating up. Former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden trading attacks, both campaigning this weekend in the all-important state of Georgia, with President Biden won in 2020 by just over 11,000 votes. And tonight, our new ABC News Ipsos poll has new revelations on how much Americans trust these candidates. So let's get right to ABC's Mary Alice Parks at the White House. Right, Mary Alice, this is not looking good for either campaign.
Yeah, Rachel, a possible sign that this could be such a tight election. Americans split on who they trust more to lead the election, to lead the country, I should say. Trump ahead of Biden by 3 percentage points, but that's within the margin of error. And 30% of respondents in our ABC News Ipsos poll say they trust neither candidate. So perhaps some voters still up for grabs. Now, both candidates' favorability ratings so low. 33% for Biden, 29% for Trump. And just more than 1 in 5 Americans have an unfavorable view of both Biden and Trump. Americans overall still saying that they trust Trump better than Biden on the economy and the border, obviously 2 top issues. Now, as far as the State of the Union, of those who watched or read about the State of the Union, 44% said that they did think Biden did better than expected. And I can tell you the president's campaign, they feel good about things. They say that he raised $10 million in the 24 hours right after the president's speech. Rachel, that was his biggest fundraising, single day of fundraising so far.
His message settling with some of his supporters. Mary Alice, thank you. Tonight, the Justice Department has reportedly opened a criminal investigation into Boeing. It comes after those terrifying moments in January, a door plug ripping off an Alaska Airlines plane in the middle of the flight. Tonight, what the NTSB is demanding from Boeing. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood.
Tonight, Boeing now the target of a Department of Justice criminal investigation into that terrifying mid-air blowout, according to the Wall Street Journal. A door plug on Boeing 737 MAX 9 ripping off during an Alaska Airlines flight in January, forcing an emergency landing, just narrowly avoiding a potential catastrophe. And tonight, the NTSB wants to know who removed 4 bolts its investigation found were missing from that door plug. 3 shown here in this photo, texted among Boeing employees. the agency demanding Boeing provide any production documents and information on the specific production shifts and the names of the 25 employees at their Washington plant who worked on those bolts. Telling a Senate Commerce Committee last week, Boeing has yet to comply.
It's absurd that 2 months later, we don't have that.
In this letter to Committee Chair Senator Maria Cantwell, Boeing says they sent the employee names, but admitting when it comes to the production records, we have looked extensively and have not found any such documentation, adding the documents required by our processes were not created when the door plug was opened. The DOJ was already looking into Boeing, and more specifically, whether the company violated its 2021 deferred prosecution agreement after 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes, requiring the company to cooperate with federal probes.
And Rachel, Boeing and the DOJ declined to comment. Rachel? Thanks, Morgan. Also tonight, we are getting a glimpse of Britain's Princess Kate, the Princess of Wales, tweeting out a photo with her 3 children. It's the first official photo since she left the hospital in January. ABC's Inez de la Catera has more from outside Buckingham Palace.
Tonight, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, appearing in an official photograph for the first time since the palace announced she had undergone abdominal surgery nearly 2 months ago, posting this image with her children George, Charlotte, and Louis to mark Mother's Day in Britain, writing, "Thank you for your kind wishes and continued support over the last 2 months," signing off C for Catherine, but providing no update on her health. Kensington Palace saying her husband Prince William took the photograph earlier this week. It comes amid weeks of questions about the princess's condition. The palace saying they would only provide updates when there was significant information. Just days ago, paparazzi snapped this image of her driving with her mother in Windsor. Prior to that, she hadn't been seen since Christmas.
I think certainly the image absolutely has the effect of silencing some of that speculation, particularly some of the more wild kind of speculation that we're seeing online around her recovery.
And we are expecting to see Queen Camilla and Prince William tomorrow as they mark Commonwealth Day with a service at Westminster Abbey. Kate will not be there, and neither will King Charles, who was recently diagnosed with cancer. Rachel?
Inez, thank you. Now to the Oscars red carpet. The 96th Annual Academy Awards is just about to get underway. Jimmy Kimmel is back once again, joining the ranks of longtime Oscar hosts. But the big question tonight, will Oppenheimer sweep its way into Oscar history? It's already cleaned up at the pre-Oscar awards. And will history be made by Lily Gladstone? She could become the first Native American person to take home an Oscar for her lead in the film Killers of the Flower Moon. So let's get right to the red carpet, which is back to red after last year's champagne carpet. And that's where we find our Whit Johnson and Lindsay Davis, who are watching it all. Whit, Lindsay, is there a sense that Oppenheimer is going to sweep tonight?
Hey, Rachel, happy Oscar Sunday. Oppenheimer has a huge chance at taking home the gold tonight, and not just for Best Picture. The film was actually nominated for a whopping 13 awards, which positions the film to potentially make history for the most awards ever won by a single film. The number to beat is 11. Currently, 3 films are tied with 11 total wins. Those movies, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, Titanic, and Ben-Hur. Another closely watched race for Oppenheimer fans will be Best Actor. Cillian Murphy, the favorite, but a late surge of support for the holdovers, Paul Giamatti, could lead to an upset.
And other potential history-making moments to look for tonight. Robert De Niro up for Best Supporting Actor. He's clinched his 9th total nomination, which ties him with only 7 other actors in history. And everyone's talking about Lily Gladstone. Her performance in Killers of the Flower Moon got her the nomination for Best Actress. If she takes home the gold, she would become the first Native American to ever win in an acting category. In Poor Things, Emma Stone also a strong contender for Best Actress, so some wondering, could this mean a tie? The last time a Best Actress ended in a tie was in 1969 with Barbra Streisand for Funny Girl and Katharine Hepburn for The Lion in Winter. So a lot to watch for tonight. Rachel, back to you.
A big night. All right, Lindsay, Whit, thank you. And stay with ABC. Lindsay and Whit are live on the red carpet following the news. And the 96th Academy Awards ceremony starts 1 hour earlier than usual at 7 p.m. Eastern. There's still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Sunday. A daring rescue effort, police pulling teenagers from a burning car. And there's nothing like a buzzer beater, but what made this one extra special? Next tonight, an arrest in a horrific attack in the New York subway. The suspect, now identified as Christian Valdez. Police say he pushed his girlfriend in front of a train in Lower Manhattan on Saturday. The woman lost both of her feet. Valdez now charged with attempted murder. Police say he was on parole after serving time for an attack on another woman and her 3-year-old daughter. Moving on to this new video just released showing a frantic rescue effort in Southern California. A car carrying teenagers crashed into a light pole in Encino last month. Officers can be seen breaking the windows as smoke begins to billow from the car. 2 of the teenagers were pulled to safety just as the flames erupted. A 3rd passenger, a 16-year-old girl, could not be rescued and died at the scene. When we come back, what could be better than hitting a game-winning shot? Wait till you hear the backstory. To the index now, and a buzzer beater that no one saw coming. With 1 second left on Saturday, Camila Cardoso banked a 3-pointer for the win over Tennessee. That shot saved South Carolina's undefeated season. The college senior had never even taken a 3-point shot before. And making it even sweeter, the team's head coach had Cardoso's mom and sister flown in from Brazil. It was the first time they had ever seen her play in college. When we come back, what it's like to be on the cusp of Oscar history, what Lily Gladstone told our Lindsay Davis. Tonight, everyone will be watching to see if Lily Gladstone makes history as the first Native American to win an Oscar for lead actress. Our Lindsay Davis spent some time with her on the road to the Oscars.
How have the Osage responded to all of this attention?
It's since the story ultimately belongs to them. It was made by Martin Scorsese, but made with Osage people. So it was it's really remarkable to see the kind of discourse that it's raised. The level of ownership and pride. It was made with great care.
I kind of felt a sense of shame that I had no idea about these murders that had taken place in Oklahoma for this oil inheritance. When did you first learn about this time?
Honestly, a lot of people I think express that level of shame, but there were a lot of Osage people that grew up not knowing about this because it was such a traumatic chapter. It's a tenet of the culture and survival to keep moving forward. You never stand in the same river twice. The water is always changing because it keeps moving forward. And I think when the Reign of Terror was over, a lot of people just wanted to keep moving. Being the first Native American nominee for this kind of blows my mind because the origin of film, some of the earliest film reels that people were watching, pouring out to go see, were made by Native people, documenting and showing and capturing some of our dances, some of our own stories. American Indians were at the heart of Hollywood in the 1920s. Those artists back then really influenced the culture of film. So having this moment, this year, it's long overdue, but it's very welcome.
Our thanks to Lindsay. Thanks for watching. I'm Rachel Scott. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Moore, America's most watched newscast.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.